Chosen one, the quiet ache you've been carrying, that heaviness you tried to explain but couldn't. It wasn't just emotion drifting through your chest. It was your Father in heaven trying to reach you again and again and again. You felt it in the way the room suddenly went still. You felt it in the way your breath caught for reasons you couldn't name. You felt it in the pull behind your ribs, like someone whispering your name from a place older than memory. Listen. This wasn't imagination. This wasn't random. This was a summons. You've been walking through your days pretending nothing is shifting, pretending you don't sense that strange pressure around your spirit, but heaven has been speaking to you with increasing urgency. You didn't miss the messages. You only doubted they were real. When you woke up at 3 a.m. and stared at the ceiling, wondering why your heart felt unsettled, that was him. When you felt tears rise for no clear reason, when the atmosphere changed mid-thought, when your peace fluttered like a startled bird, that was him. Trying, calling, reaching. Because chosen one, your Father has been trying to break through the noise around you and the noise within you. He's been trying to pull you back into alignment with the destiny you've been drifting from. Not because you failed, not because you disappointed him, but because you are needed. Now, heaven has opened a window over your life, a kairos moment, a divine interruption. You didn't stumble into this message. You were drawn here the same way Moses was drawn to the burning bush, by a pull he couldn't ignore. Something sacred is stirring around your name. Something that's been delayed is trying to reach you, and God is refusing to let you miss it. Look closely at your life lately. The sudden shift in people's behavior, the dreams that feel too vivid, the wave of exhaustion that hits you right before clarity comes. These aren't coincidences. These are signals. Heaven tapping on the door of your awareness. And what's most astonishing is this. He's been sending the same message repeatedly because you didn't recognize his first whisper, or his second, or his 10th. But still he kept reaching, because that's what a father does. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a future and a hope." That hope has been calling your name, but pain made it hard for you to hear. Disappointment made your ears heavy. Delay made your faith tired, but even then, heaven would not stop. God is too invested in your destiny to let silence swallow his voice. So hear this with your whole spirit. You are being called back into alignment, into purpose, into awakening. This is your moment to listen. And before we go deeper into what your Father has been trying to tell you, pause for a breath. Settle your spirit. Because the next part of this message carries the very clarity you've been asking for in secret. And that's why the ache in your chest hasn't eased. Because the message he tried to send you didn't land the first time, or the second, or the 10th. And now the weight of what you couldn't hear has begun to press on you in ways you can no longer ignore. Listen, chosen one. This is where the real struggle begins. You've been moving through your days like someone carrying a secret injury, smiling just enough to keep people from asking questions, functioning just enough to avoid falling apart. But every night, when the world grows quiet and the spiritual warfare around your life becomes louder than your thoughts, something inside you tightens. You feel it, don't you? That pull behind the ribs, that heaviness that wakes you before dawn, that sense that someone, somewhere, has been calling your name from the unseen, and yet you couldn't answer. Because you didn't know how, because the pain got in the way. You've been wondering why you walk through your own home feeling like a guest, why you stand in the shower longer than necessary because the water drowns out the noise in your mind, why you've been losing interest in people, places, routines that once felt familiar. It's not depression. It's not exhaustion. It's a sign, a holy disruption. The early stages of destiny alignment pressing against the walls of a life that can no longer contain who you're becoming. But look closer. There's another wound, one you rarely speak about. It's the quiet disappointment you carry toward heaven itself. The part of you that whispers, "If my Father has been trying to reach me, why couldn't I hear him?" The part of you that wonders if you missed your breakthrough timing, if you misread the season, if you somehow disqualified yourself from the abundance and personal transformation you've been praying for. And underneath that, a fear you never say out loud. The fear that God grew tired of waiting for you. The fear that you've fallen behind. The fear that what was meant for you has already passed you by. But that's not the truth. The truth is far more painful and far more beautiful. You didn't miss him. Your wounds muffled the sound. Because how can a heart hear divine purpose when it's still trying to survive betrayal? How can a soul receive instruction when it's still carrying the residue of people who drained your spirit, exploited your kindness, or made you doubt your own discernment? How can someone step into abundance or generational wealth when they've been living under years of internalized scarcity and financial blockage that didn't even originate with them? You've been fighting battles no one saw, and losing energy no one understood, and carrying expectations that were never yours to carry. There were nights you prayed until your throat tightened, but the heavens felt like brass. There were mornings you woke up and felt old, not in body, but in spirit, like you've been alive too long without seeing the promise. And even when God tried to whisper comfort, the echo got tangled in your anxiety, your overthinking, your unhealed grief. But here's the part you've never told anyone. There's someone you trusted who made the pain heavier. Someone whose absence still stings in the bones. Someone whose silence shaped you more than their words ever did. You kept trying to make peace with their memory, but the truth is, you've been grieving a version of them that never truly existed. And that grief has been blocking your ability to recognize the divine reversal forming in the background of your life. Because how can a heart open to new instruction when it's still bleeding from old promises? Chosen one. Your Father saw all of this. He counted every moment you broke quietly so no one would worry. He watched you hold your breath through conversations that felt wrong. He listened to the thoughts you never dared confess. What if I'm the reason nothing is moving? What if I'm not chosen, just hopeful? What if God stopped talking because I stopped listening? But the truth is, he never stopped. The messages just kept hitting the parts of you that were still in survival mode. That's why you've been feeling the strange tension lately. Something between sorrow and awakening, between weariness and expectation. This tension is the sign that your spirit is catching up to what heaven already decreed. It's the evidence that the breakthrough season hovering over your life is closer than your emotions realize. And yet, there's something even deeper. A root beneath the struggle. A pattern heaven has been trying to break for years. Because the real reason your Father has been trying to reach you again and again is not just to comfort you, not just to guide you, but to warn you of something approaching, something tied to your destiny delay, something that has followed your bloodline, something that has tried to sabotage your elevation every time you got close. You feel that truth rising in your spirit right now, don't you? That sudden seriousness in your breath, that subtle shift in the atmosphere around you, that sense that what's coming next is something you've always suspected but never had the words for. And it's right here, pressing against the edge of your awareness, waiting to be revealed as we step into the next part of this message, where heaven finally shows you why your Father refused to be silent, and what has been interfering with your destiny all along. And the truth rising in your spirit right now, the one you can almost feel forming behind your breath, is only the beginning of what heaven has been trying to show you, because the struggle you're in did not start this year. or last year. It began long before you had language for it. It began in the places where you learned to survive instead of belong. Look at your childhood for a moment. The rooms where you sat quietly, the conversations where your voice was dismissed before you even finished a sentence. You didn't choose the black sheep role. It was handed to you. You grew up carrying a spiritual assignment your family never understood. And because they couldn't understand the depth of your calling, they judged the depth of your feelings instead. You were labeled dramatic when you were actually discerning. You were called difficult when you were simply truthful. You were treated like the problem when you were the only one willing to see the problem, and that left a fracture in you. A silent fracture. A wound that still burns in moments when no one is watching. That's why crowded rooms exhaust you. That's why family gatherings leave you feeling like you're shrinking inside your own skin. That's why you find yourself rehearsing conversations long after they end, wondering, why does no one hear me? Why does no one see me? Because you were never meant to blend in. Your spirit has been marked for a generational pivot, and the people around you could sense the difference even before you did. That difference scared them. It challenged the cycles they were comfortable living in, and so they made you the scapegoat, the one to blame, the one to silence, the one to isolate, so the dysfunction never had to face itself. But here's the part you rarely admit. It still hurts. Even now. Even after all this time. It hurts that you were the one they turned on when all you ever wanted was peace. It hurts that your pure intentions were twisted into accusations. It hurts that the people you would have bled for didn't even offer you a bandage. And heaven saw every moment of it. Heaven recorded every word. Heaven heard every cry you swallowed so the house wouldn't hear. Before we cross into what comes next, pause, breathe, and if your spirit is stirring because this is your story, write "I break the scapegoat identity" in the comments to seal your recognition of what heaven is exposing. But the pain didn't stop with people, and neither did the warfare, because the isolation that wrapped around your childhood didn't fade in adulthood. It evolved. It became a hermit phase that you didn't choose but couldn't escape. A cocoon that felt both holy and suffocating. You started withdrawing from conversations mid-sentence. You stopped responding to messages because something felt off. You deleted social media without warning. You turned down invitations without explanation. Not because you hated people, but because every interaction felt spiritually heavy. Every atmosphere felt contaminated. Every room felt too loud for the quiet work God was doing inside your soul. And the deeper truth? Your Father wasn't trying to hide you from the world. He was trying to hide you for your destiny. He knew the spiritual warfare around your life was intensifying. He knew the attacks were tightening as your breakthrough timing approached. He knew certain voices could trigger old wounds, delaying your destiny alignment. He knew that if he didn't pull you aside, you would keep letting people into places of your heart they had no authority to enter. So he placed you in a cocoon, not to punish you, but to protect the parts of you that were being reshaped for divine intervention. And yet, even in that cocoon, something else began happening. Something you couldn't explain. Something that made you feel like the very atmosphere around you was shifting in ways that defied logic. Because right when heaven began pulling you inward, the physical world around you started malfunctioning. Your phone freezing, your car stalling, emails disappearing, appliances breaking without reason, unexpected bills appearing out of nowhere right when you finally felt financially stable. You brushed it off as coincidence, bad luck, or timing. But it wasn't timing, it was interference, low-frequency resistance. Electronic backlash that only happens when a chosen one is nearing a breakthrough that threatens the enemy's entire strategy against their bloodline. And you've wondered for weeks now why everything seems to glitch when you pray, why the lights flicker when you cry, Why technology fails at the exact moment you start speaking declarations of abundance and wealth mindset over your life. Chosen one. It's because something is trying to block the transmission. Something is trying to distort the signal. Something is trying to intercept the message your father has been sending again and again. The one that is finally reaching you now. The one that has been fighting its way through layers of resistance. The one that carries the truth about why your destiny has been under such intense pressure and why everything around you began to unravel the moment you got close to. And right when everything around you began to unravel, the moment you got close to the edge of something massive, something ancient, something heaven has been trying to push into your awareness. Because what you've been fighting lately is not just exhaustion, it's not just stress, it's not just life happening. It is the residue of a delayed promise pressing on your spirit. You know the feeling well. The slow erosion of hope. The way your chest tightens when you think about how long you've been waiting. The way your breath catches when someone innocently asks, "So, what's next for you?" The way your heart sinks because you have no answer. Not because you lack vision, but because every time you tried to step forward, the ground shifted beneath you. It's that specific kind of fatigue that doesn't show in your face, but weighs in your bones. The heaviness that climbs your back the moment you wake. The dread that settles when you realize another day has come and the breakthrough still hasn't arrived. That suffocating whisper, maybe it was never going to happen for you. And the hardest part, you don't talk about this with anyone. Not really. When people ask how you're doing, you smile and say, "I'm okay." But heaven knows you're not okay. Heaven saw the night you sat on the edge of your bed, staring at a closed door in your life that should have opened years ago. Heaven heard the question lodged in your throat. "Father, did I misunderstand you? Or did you change your mind about me?" No, chosen one. He didn't change his mind, but the spiritual warfare. Signed to your promise tried too. Your fatigue is the mark of a destiny so weighty, the enemy has worked overtime to delay its fulfillment, and every delay carved another crack in your confidence. Before we move deeper, pause and acknowledge this moment. If this speaks to a place you rarely admit even to yourself, comment, "My promise still lives." Let that be your declaration that heaven's timeline has not expired. Because the truth is, your fatigue didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a repeated cycle. The same lesson dressed in different clothing, the same wound wearing different faces, the same disappointment repeating like a loop embedded in your history. A boss time loop. You've met the same kind of person in different seasons. You've walked into the same trap with new packaging. You've stood at the brink of opportunity, only to watch it slip away in a familiar pattern. Again and again and again. It's as if your life has been circling around a spiritual cul-de-sac. Every time you thought you finally broke free, another version of the old story appeared. Another setback that felt like déjà vu. Another emotional trigger you thought you had outgrown resurfaced without warning, and you began to fear the worst. What if this is all I will ever know? What if I'm walking in circles? What if my destiny is trapped behind a generational curse I didn't create? You've replayed conversations in your mind for years. You've watched doors open for people who didn't pray as hard, didn't try as much, didn't hurt as deeply. You've wondered if your life is frozen in a place while the world moves forward without you. But the time loop wasn't proof of failure. It was proof of Asatura's spiritual entanglement. A repeated test tied to your bloodline, designed to keep you from crossing into your breakthrough timing. A cycle meant to drain your hope, weaken your voice, and dull your discernment, right as heaven prepares a divine intervention. And now that intervention is drawing close enough for your spirit to feel its vibration. Close enough to stir your dreams. Close enough to make the old patterns shake. Close enough that the enemy is scrambling to distract you, distort you, and detour you before you finally understand the true reason your Father in heaven tried to reach you again and again. Because hidden beneath the delays, the fatigue, the repeated cycles, was a truth so heavy, so urgent, so destiny-altering that even now the air around you feels different as we step into that revelation. Something else begins to stir beneath the surface of your awareness. An older ache, a deeper wound, one you've tried to forget but that refuses to stay buried. Because the delays didn't just attack your hope, they attacked your identity. There were voices in your life, some subtle, some sharp, that began planting seeds of doubt long before you ever reached adulthood. Words spoken in passing that lodged themselves into your ribs. Glances that made you shrink without understanding why. Those early moments became the blueprint for a shadow that still follows you into every room, the imposter shadow. It's the feeling that rises right when you're about to step into something bigger. The tremble in your stomach when opportunity knocks. The whisper that says, "Are you sure you're meant for this?" The thought that creeps in when you succeed. This must be a fluke. You know exactly what it feels like. A tightening in your throat, a burning behind your eyes, a heat across your chest like someone lightly pressing down on you. Your body remembers every moment someone underestimated you. Every time you were told to be realistic. Every time someone praised you with their mouth but questioned you with their eyes. And the cruelest part is this. You started questioning yourself before anyone else even had the chance. Because how do you stand tall when the ground beneath your confidence was cracked years ago? How do you believe in divine purpose when you were taught to apologize for taking up space? How do you walk in destiny alignment when every breakthrough season comes with the fear you don't deserve it? Yet even in that fear, even in that trembling self-doubt, something resilient inside you kept living, kept reaching, kept hoping, but the imposter shadow wasn't the only thing pulling at you. It was just the beginning of a much older, much heavier inheritance. Before we cross into that deeper realm, if you feel this part of the journey in your bones, write, "I break the shadow of unworthiness" in the comments as a sign you're willing to confront what's been following you. Because this next layer didn't start with you. It began generations before you could speak your first word. Your spirit has been carrying the ancestral burden of being the cycle breaker. Look closely at your lineage. Patterns repeat like a haunting rhythm. Promises started but never finished. Dreams birthed but never nurtured. Talented people trapped by circumstances, limited by fear, bound by generational curse after generational curse. You saw the same emotional wounds passed from one relative to another. You watched financial blockage suffocate entire branches of your family tree. You witnessed people settle for less, not because they lacked desire, but because they lacked healing. And somewhere along the line, heaven chose you to be the interruption. But no one warned you how heavy that mantle would feel. How isolating it would be to step into new levels while the past tried to drag you backwards. How exhausting it would be to rewrite a story that wasn't yours to begin with. You're the first to say, "This ends with me," and the first to bleed because of that decision. You're the first to crave abundance and the first to confront the poverty mindset ingrained in your lineage. You're the first to seek emotional healing and the first to feel the spiritual warfare increase when you do. You're the first to chase generational wealth and the first to break through ceilings no one before you even attempted to touch. No wonder your spirit feels stretched. No wonder your heart feels torn between exhaustion and hope. No wonder heaven has tried again and again to reach you. Because this battle wasn't just about your life. It was about every life that will come after yours. But even this is not the deepest truth your Father has been trying to reveal. There is something else. Something sharper, something more urgent, something that explains every attack, every delay, every tear-stained night. And it's rising now, pressing at the edge of your spirit as we begin to approach. And that rising pressure you feel in your chest right now, that trembling awareness that something in your life is about to break open, it isn't imagination, it's spiritual physics. Heaven has been building toward this moment through every trial you've ever survived. Because chosen one, none of it was random. Not the loneliness that hollowed you out, not the friendships that turned into betrayals, not the financial strain that hit you at the worst possible moment, not the spiritual warfare that made you question your sanity, not the nights you couldn't sleep, not the mornings you couldn't breathe. Every delay, every disappointment, every heartbreak, every attack. They were not punishments, they were preparation. You weren't being broken, you were being forged. Heaven has an elite training program, and only those marked for uncommon elevation are submitted to it. It strips away false strength and builds a kind of spiritual resilience that wealth cannot corrupt, influence cannot inflate, and the enemy cannot break. Look at your story again. Really look. The loneliness wasn't abandonment. It was God removing the noise so you could hear him. The betrayal wasn't rejection. It was God cutting away Judas before you stepped into glory. The financial blockage wasn't failure. It was God protecting you from premature stewardship. The exhaustion wasn't weakness. It was your spirit resisting cycles that no longer fit your destiny. The warfare wasn't a sign you were losing. It was proof that the enemy saw your future before you did. And yet, you endured, wounded but enduring, confused but enduring, heartbroken but enduring, praying even when you didn't hear anything back, holding on even when your hands shook. Chosen one, hear this with your whole being. Heaven has been preparing you for restoration so massive, so generational, so undeniably divine that only refined hands could carry it. This is why the pressure has been unbearable. Because the blessing will be unimaginable. You are approaching a season of divine reversal, where the years the enemy stole will be returned to you in double measure. A wealth mindset is being activated in you. A breakthrough season is forming around you. A destiny alignment is about to pull every scattered piece of your life into order. If you feel this truth vibrating through your spirit, if something in you knows you've been prepared for more than suffering, tap subscribe and like right now, not as a gesture, but as a prophetic agreement. Tap it if you believe God is preparing to restore to you double everything you lost. Because now, we arrive at the turning point, the place where the struggle ends and the strategy begins, the place where you stop being chased and start advancing, the place where the victim becomes the warrior and the warfare begins to reverse. You have endured enough, and now God says it is time to strike back. He has given me the most precise and divinely revealed strategies, the framework, the blueprint, the spiritual weapons, the pathway, the set of instructions that will help you overturn this battle starting tonight. And the first of these is already stirring in your spirit, rising like a command you once heard but didn't know how to interpret. Heaven calls it the law of silence, and it is the starting point for every chosen one whose Father has been trying to reach them again and again. Listen closely now. This is where spiritual warfare begins to shift in your favor. There are moments in your journey when speaking less is not weakness, it's warfare. Your breakthroughs were never stolen by louder enemies, but by quieter leaks. Every time you shared your dreams too early, the atmosphere shifted. Every time you confided in someone who wasn't assigned to your destiny alignment, sabotage entered through the cracks. Heaven is telling you now, Seal your spirit. Do this immediately. Pull your voice back from the wrong ears. Stop explaining yourself to people who are never meant to understand the weight you carry. There are blessings forming around you that require incubation, not conversation. When the Father tried to reach you in past seasons, the noise around you drowned him out. But silence, intentional, consecrated silence, restores your frequency. It sharpens your discernment. It reveals who is aligned with you and who is aligned against you. And without this silence, the next phase of destiny acceleration cannot take root. And once that silence begins sanctifying your atmosphere, heaven reveals the next instruction, the turning of the inner gate. This is the moment when you stop begging for clarity and begin positioning yourself to receive it. You've been walking through life with your inner world half closed, half guarded, half believing, because pain made you suspicious of your own spirit. But now, God is asking you to open the gate He's been knocking on. This isn't emotional openness, it's spiritual receptivity. It's the choice to align your internal posture with the breakthrough timing God has already scheduled. Here's what this looks like in practice. Stop rehearsing what went wrong. Stop replaying the betrayals that wounded you. Stop expecting loss every time something good approaches. When the inner gate is closed, even miracles feel dangerous. But when you allow yourself to trust again, to expect divine intervention, to anticipate restoration, your entire spiritual field begins to shift. Your Father needs access to that gate, your instructions, your financial breakthrough, your restored confidence, your healing from generational curses. They are all waiting at that threshold. Open it now, even if it trembles. And as that gate begins to open, another directive arrives with the precision of a whisper sharpened into a sword. Heaven calls this the reversal of agreement. Every battle you've faced, every delay that shadowed you, every pattern that kept repeating, none of it could attach itself to your life without agreement. Not conscious agreement, emotional agreement, wounded agreement. The agreements you made without knowing, maybe I deserve less. Maybe love isn't for me. Maybe stability will always slip away. These were spiritual contracts written in moments of exhaustion, and the enemy held you to them. But now, God is teaching you to revoke what you never meant to sign. Here is what you must stop doing immediately. Stop letting old disappointments define your future. Stop letting the voice of fear speak louder than the voice of purpose. Stop letting scarcity shape decisions meant to be made from abundance. Speak against the agreements that kept you bound. Heaven moves when you do. Break the words you whispered in despair. Renounce the lies you absorbed when you were tired. Cancel every inner vow that said, I will never rise again. Because as those agreements shatter, the atmosphere around your life begins to realign, and as those old agreements shatter, the atmosphere around your life begins to realign, almost as if heaven itself is clearing space for what must come next. Because once the internal contracts are broken, God immediately turns your attention outward, to the very environments that have been shaping your spirit without your permission. And this is where heaven introduces the environment shift. Chosen one, listen carefully. Your spiritual warfare hasn't only been internal, it has been environmental. For months, maybe even years, you've felt uneasy in your own rooms, distracted in your own spaces, tired in places where you should have felt safe. Clutter isn't just clutter. It's an atmosphere. The mess you tolerate becomes the mindset you live in. The piles in the corner, the clothes you keep though they carry memories of old trauma, the objects from seasons long dead, they are anchors, and heaven needs you unanchored for destiny acceleration. Go through your space with prophetic eyes. Touch the objects you keep out of guilt. Feel the weight of items that no longer match who you're becoming. Then remove them. Declutter not as a cleaning task, but as a declaration. I refuse to live in environments built for my old self. When the atmosphere shifts, your frequency rises. When your frequency rises, clarity of purpose becomes sharp. And when clarity sharpens, divine alignment snaps into place faster than you ever imagined. And as you cleanse your physical space, heaven asks you to confront something even more powerful: the vision audit. Because the environment outside you is only half the battle, the environment entering you is the other. Pay attention to what your eyes absorb, what your ears consume, what your mind silently negotiates with every day. You think you're just listening to a song, but the lyrics become architecture in your subconscious. You think you're just scrolling, but the images are programming your self-worth. You think you're just watching the news, but the fear is soaking into your spiritual port. God is saying, guard your gates. Be fierce about it. Be intentional about it. Remove every voice that normalizes scarcity if you want a financial breakthrough. Remove every message that glorifies chaos if you want peace. Remove every influencer that activates insecurity. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer distractions. This is the season where heaven is refining your focus for a wealth transfer, and focus is impossible when your gates are unguarded. If your spirit feels this truth pressing against you, comment, "My gates are protected," to seal your agreement. And once your spaces are cleansed and your gates are fortified, the Father whispers the next instruction, one that strikes directly at the root of every generational curse that ever tried to bury your calling. Heaven calls it the midnight cry. Not everyone is summoned to this dimension, but you are. You've noticed it, those sudden awakenings at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., moments when your spirit jolts awake while your body is still heavy. That is not insomnia, that is invitation, that is activation. That is the hour when spiritual warfare is weakest and spiritual authority is strongest. When the veil thins and heaven's instructions descend with precision. Do this. When you wake in that hour, don't grab your phone. Don't lie there in fear. Sit up, put your feet on the ground. Whisper a decree. One sentence. Father, speak. Your servant is awake. In that moment, angels respond. Strongholds crack. The enemy loses grip. You become the watchman over your own destiny. Midnight prayer is not poetic, it's potent. It is the hour when destinies shift, when divine intervention accelerates what was delayed, when breakthroughs long withheld begin to soften and loosen and tremble under the weight of your awakening authority. And as this dimension opens, there remains one final key. Heaven is preparing to place in your hands a strategy so precise that it's because that final key can only be activated once the midnight cry has softened the atmosphere around your life. Because when you rise at that sacred hour, when you stand between heaven and earth with your spirit alert, another layer of spiritual authority begins to awaken in you. And from that awakening, heaven leads you directly into the altar of praise. This is where the warfare turns illogical, not to you, but to the enemy, because praise in the middle of pain is spiritual sabotage. It breaks patterns, confuses darkness, and disrupts every generational curse that once claimed ownership over your bloodline. You've noticed it. When you start whispering gratitude, even when life hurts, the atmosphere shifts. Something loosens, something cracks. Do this intentionally. Play worship softly in your home, not as background noise, but as spiritual oxygen. Hum when your spirit feels heavy. Let tears fall if they come. They're part of the offering. Praise is not music. Praise is weaponry. When your voice rises, hell trembles because it recognizes a chosen one using a tool it cannot imitate. And once your home becomes an altar, heaven responds with acceleration you didn't even know was pending. And as that praise begins destabilizing the old battlefields, heaven immediately ushers you into another instruction, the toxic detox. Because now that your spirit is rising, the wrong people will feel it. The draining voices, the subtle manipulators, the ones who call only when they need your energy, the ones who shrink when you grow. Heaven is shining a light on them now. You feel it in your body, how certain names make your stomach tighten, how some conversations leave you feeling spiritually dehydrated, how you walk away from some people heavier than when you arrived. That is not emotional sensitivity. That is prophetic discernment. God is saying, release them. You've been tolerating connections that were never covenant, influences that sabotage your destiny acceleration. Keep your circles small. Keep your spirit guarded. Keep your purpose protected. If you feel the weight of this truth settling into your bones, comment, I release what drains me, to seal the detox. And when space is cleared, when the dissonant voices are cut away, your heart finally becomes capable of performing the instruction heaven reveals next, the forgiveness release. This is the strategy most people avoid because it feels like surrender. But forgiveness is not release for them, it's release for you. Every grudge is a chain around your ankle. Every resentment is a spiritual blockage. Every unspoken hurt is a cord the enemy tugs whenever you get close to breakthrough. Think of the person whose name still tightens your throat, the memory that still burns behind your ribs, the betrayal that reshaped your confidence. You're not weak because it hurt. You're chosen because you survived it, but survival is not the same as freedom. Do this tonight. Lay your hand over your chest and speak the name that has haunted you. Then whisper, even if your voice cracks, I release you from my spirit. Forgiveness is not agreement. It is eviction. It is the tearing down of altars built in the wrong seasons. It is the final blow that breaks the spiritual warfare lingering in your bloodstream. And as that release begins untying the last knots around your destiny, there is still one more instruction. One final, sacred protocol heaven has been waiting for the perfect moment to reveal, a key so foundational that everything you've built so far becomes the foundation for what heaven is about to place in your hands. Next. Because once forgiveness begins dissolving the chains you didn't even realize you were carrying, the spirit becomes lighter, clearer, more receptive. And in that clarity, God can finally lead you into the protocol of first fruits. This isn't about ritual. This is about alignment. For too long, you've been waking up and stepping straight into battle, checking messages, absorbing chaos, reacting to the world before anchoring yourself in God. And every time you did, your day bent toward the storm instead of the spirit. But when heaven calls you to give him the first moments of your morning, something supernatural happens. Your mind stops bracing for attack. Your heart stops scrambling for peace. Your spirit steps into the day with authority instead of anxiety. Do this intentionally. Before you reach for your phone, reach inward. Whisper gratitude. Read one verse. Sit in silence. You're not giving God time, you're giving him permission. Permission to order your steps, to enlarge your capacity, to open pathways that lead to financial breakthrough, wealth transfer, and divine alignment. This single shift rewrites the tone of your entire day. And as those early moments begin training your spirit to prioritize heaven over noise, God reveals another discipline, one that shapes the very language of your atmosphere, the embargo on negative speech. Chosen one, hear this with your whole spirit. Your words have been weaponized against you without you realizing it. Every "I'm tired," every "I can't," every "nothing ever works out for me." Those were not expressions of emotion. They were prophetic decrees against your own life. Destiny acceleration cannot coexist with a tongue trained to announce defeat. Heaven is commanding you to stop speaking from your wounds and start speaking from your future. Do this immediately. Monitor every word. Replace complaint with expectation. Replace fear with declaration. Replace doubt with prophetic instruction. Your mouth is a gate. Open it wisely. If this resonates, if you feel conviction stirring inside you, comment, "My words build my future." Let that be your vow to shift the frequency you operate in. And as your speech cleanses, as the atmosphere around you begins to reverberate with faith instead of fear, heaven guides you into a discipline deeper still, the fasting breakthrough. Because there are battles attached to your bloodline that will not break through ordinary effort. Some generational curses dissolve only when the body participates in the spiritual war. Fasting is not punishment. It is purification. It sharpens discernment. It heightens spiritual authority. It weakens the hold that old patterns have on your life. When you fast, your spirit becomes louder than your flesh, and God's voice becomes clearer than your cravings. This is where hidden instructions emerge. This is where prophetic clarity activates. This is where the path to wealth, restoration, and divine intervention becomes illuminated with precision. Start small. Start intentionally. Fast one meal. Fast one morning. Fast one distraction. Let your hunger translate into spiritual fire. Through fasting, heaven aligns your inner frequency with the magnitude of the future you're about to step into. And just as this purification begins reshaping your spiritual structure, there remains one more protocol, one final instruction, one key heaven has waited to place in your hands until your spirit was ready to carry it. And it's here, chosen one, right here at the edge of transformation, that heaven gives you a sobering truth. None of this matters if you cannot remain consistent, not steady for a moment, not passionate for a weekend, not disciplined for 3 days before slipping back into old patterns. Spiritual momentum is fragile, destiny alignment is sensitive, and the enemy does not fear a believer who starts strong. He fears the one who continues. Because inconsistency is how empires fall, not from lack of revelation, not from lack of strategy, but from the erosion that happens when a chosen vessel cools down after the initial fire fades. You've felt that cycle, haven't you? That burst of clarity, followed by the slow leak of motivation. That wave of conviction, followed by the echo of old habits. That powerful spiritual warfare moment, followed by the familiar numbness of routine. It's not because you're weak. It's because human strength burns out quickly. Human willpower has an expiration date. Your flesh can sustain change for a short time, but not for the long road of destiny acceleration God is preparing you for. This next season requires a different kind of fuel, the strength of the Holy Spirit Himself. Lean into Him. Call on Him when your resolve trembles. Invite Him into your mornings, your decisions, your temptations, your exhaustion, because where your strength ends, divine empowerment begins, and that empowerment is what keeps the discipline burning, keeps the atmosphere pure, keeps your gates guarded, keeps your spirit sharp, and keeps every prophetic instruction alive long after your emotions would have quit. Consistency is not built by effort, it's built by surrender. It's built by letting the Holy Spirit breathe through you, step by step, day by day, moment by moment. And now, heaven shifts the weight again. You've been armed, you've been instructed, you've been awakened. All these weapons have now been placed in your hands. But there is one final key that activates them. Without this key, nothing ignites. That key is the sealing prayer. We are about to step into the Holy of Holies. Prepare your heart. Let everything around you grow still now. Let the noise fall away. Let the breath slow. Just a little, because we are stepping into a holy place. A thin place. A place your spirit has been longing for. Chosen one. Before we speak a single word to heaven, I want you to shift your posture. Place one hand over your heart. Let the other rest gently in your lap, or lift it if you feel led. Close your eyes. Feel the weight leaving your shoulders. Feel the air soften around you. You're not just listening anymore. You're entering, and now, in this stillness, with your spirit awake, with heaven leaning close, we pray. Lord of hosts, commander of angel armies, the one who has defended this soul long before they understood the war they were born into, we come before you slowly, reverently, with trembling gratitude. Thank you for never leaving them. Thank you for every night you watched over them, for every unseen battle you fought, for every whisper you sent when their heart was too heavy to hear. You have carried them through storms that should have broken them, through warfare that should have erased them, through seasons so dark they forgot what hope felt like. But you never forgot them. You never released them. You never loosened your grip. And now, Lord, in this sacred moment, as they sit with their hand over their heart, as they breathe in this holy stillness, as their spirit reaches toward you, we ask you to draw near, closer than breath, closer than memory, closer than fear. Wrap them in your presence like a cloak. Let every trembling place inside them feel your nearness. Let every wounded part recognize your voice. Speak into the places that ache. Speak into the places that tremble. Speak into the places they've hidden, even from themselves. Lord of hosts, you who send angels to guard those chosen for great purpose, look upon your child now. They have endured warfare without understanding why. They have survived battles meant to silence them. They have been pressed, stretched, tested, and yet they are still here. Still listening, still reaching, still yours. Pour strength into their weary spirit. Let courage rise slow and warm in their chest. Let clarity settle over their mind like morning light. Lift every heavy thought, break every lingering fear, quiet every voice that does not sound like yours. And as they sit in this sacred silence, as the atmosphere around them thickens with your nearness, as heaven bends low to hear their heartbeat, continue what you have begun in them, Lord of hosts. Because now we ask you to move into the deepest places, the places where chains have lived for generations, the places where patterns repeated before they were ever chosen, the places where their family line whispered, "This is just how life is." Right now, in your holy presence, I decree the breaker anointing over their life. Let every generational curse snap under the weight of your glory. Every inherited fear, break. Every inherited poverty mindset, break. Every inherited emotional wound, break. Every repeating cycle, every family pattern, every unseen bondage trying to trail them into their next season. I command it to shatter now, not by their strength, by your authority, your word, your fire. Let the chains fall where they stand. And as those chains collapse, Father, as freedom begins to breathe inside their spirit again, you lead us deeper still. Because once a chain breaks, once the past loses its grip, heaven immediately surrounds your child with a shield. And so now, Lord, I loose the divine hedge around them, a wall of fire behind them, a wall of fire before them, a wall of fire on every side. Let no whisper from the enemy enter their mind. Let no arrow get close to their home. Let no monitoring spirit track their progress. Surround their sleep. Surround their car. Surround their relationships. Surround their finances. Surround their calling. A hedge so thick, so blinding, that every demonic assignment loses their trail completely. And now, Father, with the hedge raised high and the chains lying broken at their feet, there is one wound left. The wound that sits inside the mind, the fog that makes it hard to think, the heaviness that makes it hard to rise, the confusion that makes it hard to hear. So right here, in this holy space, I decree mind renewal over them. Let clarity return like a sunrise. Let fog dissolve like mist before your breath. Let intrusive thoughts fall silent. Let every lying voice, the enemy, the accuser, the echo of old trauma, be shut down by your truth. I bind chaos in their thoughts. I bind anxiety in their chest. I bind the swirl of doubt that makes them question their destiny. And I loose peace, deep, anchoring peace, into every corner of their inner world. Let wisdom rise. Let direction sharpen. Let understanding illuminate paths they could not see before. Renew, restore, rebuild, until their mind is aligned with the future you authored for them. And as this renewal settles, Father, you begin to draw us toward the threshold of the final seal, the place where everything spoken here becomes permanent, and still the prayer continues to flow toward. And now, Lord of hosts, with every chain broken, every hedge raised, every thought renewed, we speak the final seal. Let this word settle. Let this freedom anchor. Let this breakthrough take root so deeply that nothing, no voice, no force, no fear, can uproot what you have established here tonight. We seal this prayer in your authority. We seal it in your fire. We seal it in the courts of heaven. It is done. It is established. It is sealed. Chosen one. Breathe. You've just crossed a threshold. Heaven has marked you. Nothing about your life is the same from this moment forward. And before you go, listen to me closely. Subscribe, not for numbers, not for growth, but so your spirit stays connected to this flow. So that every time heaven releases a prophetic instruction, it reaches you without delay. So that you're never out of alignment when the next divine whisper is sent to guide your steps. Stay connected. Stay aligned. Stay awakened. And if this word touched you, if you felt heaven move through your chest, if something shifted, even slightly, in the unseen places of your life, then consider placing a stone of remembrance today. Use the super thanks not as a donation, but as your personal altar. A moment where you say to God, I recognize what you did here. I mark this turning point in my destiny. Just as Israel placed stones beside the Jordan to remember the miracle, you are placing your own. A symbolic act that says, this is where everything changed. And now, beloved soul, walk with your head lifted. Walk with your spirit steady. Walk knowing heaven has spoken over you. Your path is opening. Your steps are ordered. Your destiny is awakening. You are walking into your purpose. And God is moving.